Two blockbuster movies that could not be more different. Greta Gerwig's over-the-top Barbie and Christopher Nolan's darker Oppenheimer created an unorthodox pair. The two movies were both released on July 21st, and soon the term Barbenheimer started to appear in social media, and watching both movies, even on the same day, became a popular trend. In 4 months, both movies set a very high box office revenue. Barbie, in particular, surpassed the billion-dollar mark and totaled a box office revenue of $1.4 billion. This outstanding performance made Greta Gerwig's movie the highest-grossing cinema release in 2023 and the highest-grossing cinema debut for a female director. Different cities across Morocco had felt the pre-earthquake shocks that struck the country on September 8th. Driven by fear, most people had decided to stay outside for long hours that night, expecting a major disaster to happen as reported by TF1. In the end, a larger event with 6.8 magnitude took place in the southwest of Marrakesh. Over 900 people died, and tremendous damages in the region occurred. Some rural villages were completely destroyed. Aftershocks continue to happen in Morocco. The most recent one was in Marrakesh with a magnitude of 4.7 on October 30th.
The Russia-Ukraine war, which began in February 2022, remained among the most trending topics in 2023. Ukraine's counteroffensive efforts and Western military aid to Ukraine were among the most covered topics in global media over the year. As of July 2023, 20 NATO countries delivered or committed to deliver over 780 tanks to the Ukrainian army to support the country in the defense of its territories. Among the Ukrainian allies, Poland is the country that delivered the most armored vehicles, with 270 T-72 tanks and 40 PT-91 tanks. As of early 2023, the political debate focused on the German-produced Leopard tanks. After initial reluctance of the German government, the delivery of Leopard tanks was green-lighted in January 2023.
While the sudden shock of the war in Ukraine triggered a sharp rise of crude oil and natural gas prices, both commodities have seen their prices decrease again in 2023. The 2023 price of natural gas has been lower than its 2021 yearly average in all months from January to October 2023. The price of gold, on the other hand, has been constantly rising since 2021. The precious metal, as Forbes explains, is seen as a very stable alternative to other monetary investments in times of uncertainty and higher inflation rates. It's safe to say that Taylor is dominating the music scene in the United States. In the 56 dates she performed across the country in 2023, the superstar featured a 44-song setlist and roughly 16 costume changes per night. During the U.S. leg of her tour, Swift drew an average of 72,000 spectators per concert and generated a nightly ticket revenue of roughly $13 million. With additional dates planned for the end of 2024, Statista estimates her US and Canadian shows would collectively generate more than $2 billion and an estimated 4.7 million concertgoers. In addition to including 13 dates in Latin America and 17 in Asia, Swift is taking her tour to Europe. Estimates indicate that this segment of the Eras Tour will represent about 30% of the overall revenue and audience worldwide. The United Nations certified in April that India now has the largest population in the world. As visible in the graph, the rapid increase of India's total population size had been an ongoing process for several decades. China, on the other hand, successfully curbed the growth of its population. In particular, the one-child policy enforced between 1980 and 2015 steered the country towards a less steep trajectory of its population growth. India was hosting country of the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup from October 5th to November 19. The event involved a total of 47 matches before the grand final between Australia and India in the Narendra Modi Stadium of Ahmedabad. Despite playing away, the Australian selection won in Ahmedabad its sixth men's world title. The Bank of Baroda estimated expenditures worth between 180 and 220 billion rupees, 2.2 to 2.6 billion US dollars. The largest share of these investments is made by TV rights and sponsorships, with influential companies like MRF Tires, Booking.com, MasterCard, and Aramco being among the main sponsors of the tournament. As the war in Ukraine started in 2022, inflation rates worldwide soared. The IMF calculated that the average inflation rate in the world in 2022 was 8.7%. For 2023, the IMF estimates a world inflation rate of 6.9%. This is lower compared to the 2022 rate, but still well above the optimal range of 2 to 3%. The slowdown of inflation in 2023 has among its causes the increase in the key interest rates decided by the majority of central banks worldwide. The Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, and the European Central Bank all raised their key interest rates above the 4% mark. Central banks of countries with double-digit inflation rates, like Brazil and Turkey, had to increase their key interest rates to double digits, too. The Central Bank of Argentina responded to an annual inflation rate of 138%, with a key interest rate of 133%. Central banks increase their key interest rates because this discourages investments and encourages saving, thus removing one of the drivers of price increases, a higher demand. Following its launch in the American market and its ad appearance during the Super Bowl earlier this year, Temu started experiencing a major growth. The worldwide traffic of Temu is significantly increasing. It is indeed starting to fiercely compete against other Chinese e-commerce platforms of similar business models, namely Shein. In June 2023, Temu achieved 226.3 million in traffic, 4.2% growth, and has for the first time approached the traffic level of Shein and outpaced it since then. Nagorno-Karabakh, also known as the Republic of Artsakh, is a self-declared state claiming independence from Azerbaijan. As of January 1, 2020, the region had more than 148,000 inhabitants, with ethnic Armenians representing the largest share of the population. While the territorial dispute dates back to 1988, a major escalation took place on September 19, 2023, when Azerbaijan launched a military offensive in Nagorno-Karabakh. The following day, Azerbaijan's army reportedly took control over the region, and a ceasefire was agreed upon, with the participation of Russian peacekeeping forces. Nagorno-Karabakh's separatist government announced the state's dissolution from January 1, 2024. A severe earthquake with a magnitude of more than 7.5 has hit Turkey and Syria in the night of February 6, the deadliest in Turkey's history since 1950. Over 50,000 people died and millions have become homeless. The estimated economic impact amounted to approximately 39 billion USD, accounting for 4% of the country's GDP. The restoration is to be lengthy, yet the Turkish government has pledged the building of 488,000 homes, along with some facilities, i.e., schools and hospitals, within a year, as the Atlantic Council reports, quoting a press statement of President Erdogan. This year's edition of the FIFA Women's World Cup was hosted by Australia and New Zealand from the 20th of July to the 20th of August. The competition saw the victory of Spain over England in front of over 75,000 spectators in the Stadium Australia in Sydney. After the conclusion of the competition, the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, in an official press release, called the event the greatest FIFA Women's World Cup ever. Indeed, compared to the previous editions of the FIFA Women's World Cup, the 2023 edition showed the record highest attendance with almost 2 million spectators in the stadiums of Australia and New Zealand. This figure is 75% higher than the total attendance registered in France in 2019. Compared to the 2019 edition, the television audience increased significantly as well. Reuters reports that, compared to the 1.12 billion TV spectators of 2019, this year's tournament was viewed by 2 billion spectators worldwide. This is a jump of 79%. The IMF estimates that, in 2023, global GDP grew by 3% compared to 2022. This growth had not been anticipated in 2022. In September 2022, the World Bank, for instance, deemed a recession in 2023 likely. The growth of global GDP in 2023 was driven by most of the world's largest economies showing solid growth rates. Notably, the US, Chinese, and Indian economies grew by 2.1, 5.0, and 6.3% respectively. On the other hand, some European economies showed below-average performances. The German economy, in particular, is estimated to see a slight decline of its 2023 GDP by 0.5 percentage point. As of the latest records available, since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, over 6 million people fled the country. Russia, Germany, and Poland took in the most refugees. All the European Union (EU) member states implemented the Temporary Protection Directive (TPD) to guarantee access to accommodation, welfare, and healthcare to refugees from Ukraine. In total, EU countries recorded 3.8 million refugees from Ukraine as of September 2023. Germany alone took in more than 1 million refugees from Ukraine.
Since the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the export of grains produced in Ukraine has been a high priority topic at diplomatic tables. As Ukraine is a key whole grains producer in the world supply chain, failing to export its production could lead to a worrying shortage. With the involvement of the UN in Turkey, on July 22, 2022, Russia and Ukraine agreed on the Black Sea Grain Initiative. The initiative guaranteed the safe shipping of over 29 million metric tons of food and whole grains from Ukrainian ports until its suspension by the Russian government on July 17, 2023. The suspension was a response to the Western sanctions, among others, imposed on the Russian Agricultural Bank.